In this video, we're going to learn how to create a bar graph in Google Sheets, and this is a continuation of the previous video that focused on how to set up a data table. So I'm going to assume that you already have a data table set up in Google Sheets, like one that I have set here. And in this video, again, we're going to look at how to make a bar graph. And in the purpose of creating any type of graph, it's to show the data that's been collected maybe in an experiment in a visual way to help whoever's looking at the table and the graph to be able to understand what the results are and to visually express that information. And so here I have a table that shows all of the raw data that I've collected, and in this pretend example I have different height values in centimeters for two different populations, and I have 7 people or 7 trials for each of these different populations. Now I could create a graph of this information, but unfortunately that would be generally incorrect, because usually anytime you create a graph and you have multiple trials, you always want to show an average. You want to graph the average of the information that you have, because that average is going to be a better representation of the entire group of data that's been collected. And so in this case, the first thing I'm going to do is create a new table that shows the average for these two populations. And to do that, I'm going to copy a lot of what I already have created. So I'm going to copy this title, the column headers, and then this first row of information. And I'm going to highlight these 3 rows, and I'm going to push Command C on my keyboard because I'm using a Mac. If you're using a PC, it's going to be Control C. And then to paste, I'm going to push Command V on my keyboard a little bit lower. And again, on a PC, that would be Control V instead of Command V. And that will paste what I had just copied, and it'll be the exact same information. I want to change my table number. This is going to be table number 2 now because it's my second table. And I'm going to change the title so that it's average height per person per population. And so I still have my column headers, and I'm going to change this to be, I'm actually just going to make this one blank. And then I'm going to change this 1 to average. It's going to show me my averages. And for the values here, I want to use the information from my table 1. And so to do that, Sheets can actually calculate the average for you really quickly and really easily. I'm going to type in equals, and that tells Google Sheets that you want it to do some function, some calculation for you. And I'm going to type in equals average, and you can see it already starts to pop up the different options that I have. And I'm going to select average. And then it's going to give me equals average parentheses, and it's now allowing me to go and select the information that I want to calculate an average for. So I'm going to highlight all of this information from population 1, so I can see it's collecting information from C4 to C10, and I'm going to press enter on my keyboard, and it's going to calculate an average of 174.57. I'd like to do the same thing for population 2, and I could go through the same steps. However, there's an easier and even a faster way to do this, since I've already set it up for one column. If I click on the box of average, 174 for my first population, I'll see that it's highlighted in blue. And there's also this blue box in the bottom right-hand corner. And if I move my cursor over it, it changes the cursor type from a pointer to this large plus icon. When it's that large plus icon, I'm going to click and drag, and that will take what is in this column box here in this box, and it will place it here. And so what it's doing is, what Sheets is doing is it's taking that function, that equation that I put in, calculating average for C4 to C10, taking that same calculation and putting it in my D column. However, it's changed from the C to the D. It's smart enough that it knows I want it to do the same thing, but now for this column of information. And so I don't even need to type it in again. It's already done that for me. And so now I have the average for population 1 and population 2. I can see there's not a big difference between them. For visual representation, I want to make this a little bit, I want to change the decimal. So I'm going to highlight both of these boxes, and I'm going to go up to the decimal box here where I can increase or decrease the number of decimals. And so I'm going to decrease both of these so that they only have 1 decimal place, and Sheets will automatically round them for me. And so now for population 1, I have an average of 174.6, and population 2, I have an average of 176.3. The last thing I'm going to do with this table is make sure I have it completely outlined. So again, I'll go up to my borders, I'm going to click the outline box, so now that it's completely outlined. The last thing, the actual thing that I want to do now is to create a graph of this information. And it's pretty easy to do now that I have my average and my two populations here. I'm going to highlight the information that I want to actually graph, which is the average for population 1 and population 2. And I'm going to go ahead and select or push the graph button. Insert chart. Move this over to the, move that over a little bit here. And so Google's already got some of this set up for me. It's showing me the average. Because I have labels here above my numbers, it automatically puts that label next to the color for each of these. So I have population 1, population 2, and it's graphing it from 174.5 to 176.5. I definitely need to add in some labels for my title and my axes as well. Move my video over a little bit here. And so when you click on the graph, this chart editor box will pop up and will allow you to make some changes to the graph. If I didn't want a column chart, I can change the type of chart right here. Line, area, column, bar. We're going to go ahead and do leave it as a column chart, pie chart, scatter plot, a couple of other different options. We're going to stick with the column chart. If I needed to do any stacking, I could change that here. This is an important part. This is the data range. And right now, this is telling me what is going to be on my x-axis. It's the average. And this is telling me that B13 and B14, so B13, right here, B13, to B14, this section of information is what's on my x-axis. Bring that chart back up. And then it tells me the different series or the chunks of information, the pieces of information that are being used. It says population 1 and population 2. These are the two different series that I have on this graph. Sometimes you'll need to use rows, use row 13 as headers. For example, if I click that, it doesn't do anything in this case because I'm already using row 13s as headers. Sometimes I'll need to switch columns or rows. I could do that in this case. It still shows population 1, population 2, and shows me the average. But I'm going to go ahead and keep these as different colors. They're a little bit easier to see. In order to actually be able to label my axes and title my charts, I need to click on the box that says Customize in the chart editor. And again, I can still change the chart style, but I want to look at chart axes and titles. And so for the chart title, I'm going to wait to do that one, but I can select it here. I want to change the horizontal axis. And I'm going to just add, it already says average, but I'm going to go ahead and add in that this is the population average. So it adds it right here. And then I want to go to my vertical axis, which is going to be the y-axis here. And I want this, in this case, to be, this is the height. And I'm going to put my units for this, and this is going to be in centimeters. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to type in a chart title. And the title should be a combination of the two axes. So in this case, population average and height. Looks like I made a mistake on my units. Add in an M here. Go back and fix that. And for chart title, I want this to be average. I'm going to do population heights with my units. And I want this to be average because I'm showing the average population height. So now a couple of last options that I can look at to maybe modify this graph a little bit. Still in my customizing on the chart editor, I have an option to look at more specifically at the horizontal axis. Actually, if I can change the font type, I can make it bold if I wanted to. I can make some changes if I need to. Same thing for the vertical axis as well. I can also change the minimum and the maximum values for these axes. If I wanted this graph to start at 0, I can change the minimum value on this axis to 0. I'm not going to do that in this case because we really want to be able to see the difference between these two bars. And if I set this value to 0, it makes it really difficult to be able to see that. So I'm going to get rid of that 0. And so now it allows me to actually see the differences between these two. When I'm all done customizing my graph, I can close the chart editor like so. And if I needed to move my graph into a document, into a Google document, I can do that pretty quickly by clicking the little 3 buttons here. I can go back and edit the chart. I can publish the chart if I want to, but I'm also have the option to be able to save it as an image. And if I click save it as an image, it will take this graph and save it as an image, like a picture, and then I can take that picture and add it to my Google document. So this is how I'd want to create a bar or column chart using the averages that I've calculated from my data table and how to put that type of graph together.